I think a lot of folks, when they think about preservation, and especially when they think about the national park system, you automatically go to the Yosemites of the world and the Joshua trees and the Big Bends and the Guadalupe Mountains. But there's this whole other part of the national park system that allows us to examine history in places like the Blackwell School. I was going through some photos and I saw a photo that looked like somebody that I recognized, and I wasn't quite sure who they were. And I took it home to my parents and my mom saw it and she said, "Oh, that's my mom. She went to the Blackwell School." And I was like, "What is the Blackwell School?" So that was the start of a very long journey of really digging into the history of the school, learning about my grandma who attended here. She only went to Blackwell for 1 year, and so I'm really, really happy that I found that photo and was able to make that direct connection. And it actually wasn't until a community conversation that we had about the Blackwell School project that I learned about my dad's family that attended the Blackwell School. Got home from the community conversation, sort of talked about what we had done, and I had never actually thought to ask my dad. And so my dad said, "Well, you know, both of my parents attended the Blackwell School." And all of a sudden, that deep connection just felt so much deeper, because now I knew that my family history with the Blackwell School went even further than I thought it had in the first place. It seems like every time I visit Marfa, every time I am involved in a project that's related to the Blackwell School, I learn something new. I end up learning something about my family or a friend's family or the community. And I really think that this can help provide that identity of this place in history that I think a lot of people lack in the history books, and in their ability to feel like their story is reflected in the way that we talk about history. Protecting the Blackwell School is such a big priority, not only I think for this community, but really for the advancement of telling undertold stories in our national park system. It's just such an opportunity to be able to tell those stories and to make sure that they're accurate and that they resonate with the space. And so in the broader sense of being able to expand the offerings of the National Park Service, there are very few park sites right now that reflect Latino American history.
I think that it's really important to protect spaces like this, like Blackwell School, the outdoors, national parks, especially for the Hispanic, the Chicano, Mexico-Americano culture. We come from a culture where we honor Mother Earth. We honor what Mother Earth gives us. We lived from the corn, we lived from the vegetation. Mother Earth also gives us inspiration. We come out and we breathe that. We look at the flowers, we look at everything that it's given us and has inspired us to write songs, to do paintings, and to do everything else. So it's really important that we preserve everything. Representing our stories of our communities, especially of the people of color, is really important. So that's why I think having all these stories of places like Blackwell, it's really important, because we need to not only know where we came from and our stories, but also we got to remember the struggles that some of our elders went through. First, thank you for sharing your story. There's a lot of things that inspired me from your story, and one of the things that really simplified everything and kind of made me even think about the way that I paint, because I always have to do the stories and I always talk about everything that happened and everything that was bad, and this shouldn't happen to our people, and it's really important to me, but there's a lot of things that happened that came out of something bad.
Yeah.
And as we were talking about the burial of Mr. Spanish, that's something that I kept thinking about, because we have to talk about that. We have to talk about what happened here, but not everything was bad. There was outcomes that came out that were good. So I wanted to actually come back and ask you to, it would be like a collaboration. Of course, the painting's not finished, because one of the things that is going to make it finalized, it would be basically you and what you decide to do with it.
Yeah. Simi, I really loved the nod to the burial of Mr. Spanish that you were able to incorporate into this piece. As we've talked about, at one point, students who attended the Blackwell School were not allowed to speak Spanish, and a teacher was frustrated by students continuing to speak Spanish, and so they got together and they were asked to write Spanish words on pieces of paper, and they, I think, might have had a Spanish dictionary, but essentially they had a funeral for Mr. Spanish, and they had to bury that language. And that was a very, very physical, tangible event that I think for a lot of people really shaped the perspective of their identity, and in a lot of ways changed their ability to feel like they were themselves. It's hard to communicate without language, and so to have that part of their identity sort of taken away from them, all of that strength, that tenacity, that courage is encapsulated in everything that's pictured here. You've done such a magnificent job of capturing just everything that has been the through line of my story, the beauty and majesty of the Chihuahuan Desert and kind of how it envelops this really, really special place that holds the collective memory of both students at the Blackwell School and students that had these experiences across the country. These words are so, so powerful. You know, cariño, corazón, orgullo, amor, dignidad. I mean, dignity, that word resonates with me so much because when you think about identity, a lot of times, language is a big part of that. I love the century plant here. I love the nopales with the tunas. You drive around town and you see those everywhere when they're flowering. Even the yellow flowers that you have in here. Oh, they're in the playground right now. This piece for me, I mean, it encapsulates so much of what makes not only Blackwell special, but this part of the world really, really special. We talk about the outdoors, we talk about the national park system, and you know, a lot of times people think about national parks in this big sense of, I'm gonna go to Big Bend, I'm gonna go to Yosemite, you know, to one of these big national parks. And a lot of times I think people don't realize that there are also these cultural sites that allow us the opportunity to talk about difficult history. And so this really marries a lot of the uniqueness of this region and how it tied to Blackwell in and of itself. You know, you have this really wonderful backdrop of the skies that for me are unmatched. I mean, you don't get skies anywhere like you get skies in West Texas. And you know, when I think about sunsets and when I think about landscapes, West Texas for me, this part of the world is so special. And then to think about all this natural beauty that is surrounding the space that will very, very soon play a really big part in telling a really hard story, and a story that has for too long gone untold or told in a way that was not given that impact and attention that I think it deserves. This does such a good job of doing that. It's just such a wonderful examination of how that nexus between the outdoors and history and spaces and community at a place like the Blackwell School come together to provide this holistic experience.